Okay, chapter 4, part 2, defining the competitive arena. So after identifying the competitors in an industry, like we looked at in section 1, the next step is to understand each competitor better. There are 4 different types of industry structures. Number 1 is called a monopoly. Then we have pure competition, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. And each is based on a number or the number of competitors and the nature of the products that are produced. Okay, so first we have monopoly. Maybe some of you have played the game Monopoly. What's the goal of that game? Of course, it's to become the one kingpin, right? The only one left who's basically got all the hotels and has bought everyone else out, bankrupted everyone else. Okay, so in a similar way, in a monopoly, there's only one firm in the industry. The firm is the industry. Okay. And examples include Eskom and Telkom. There aren't any competitors for Eskom in the electricity industry in South Africa. If you want electricity, you have to get it from Eskom. And similarly with Telkom and landline phones. There are no close substitutes. That's what a monopoly is signified as. And it's often protected by laws, which is called a regulated monopoly. Like for Eskom and Telkom, there's legislation in place which says that no other electricity companies may open up in South Africa and compete with Eskom. The same with Telkom. And firms will often charge high prices, and they will often spend very little on advertising because they don't have to, because there's no one to compete against. And also, they often have very poor service. Why? Especially in regulated monopolies, because it doesn't matter what their service is like. The consumer can't go anywhere else. So they don't have to give good service, and they can charge as high prices as they like. That's why monopolies are not good for consumerism. Okay, some private sector firms have virtual monopolies. They're not protected by any laws, like SAB. In South Africa, there's almost really no other company that can really compete with SAB. They're just so big, right, in terms of alcoholic beverages. This is known as an economic monopoly. Patent rights can sometimes also create monopolies, but for a short period of time. Like Xerox, they had a dry paper copying patent. Remember, they make printers, and they had a specific patent which gave them something of a monopoly in the industry until their patent ran out. There we go. Only when the patent expired could other competitors enter the market. Then we have pure competition. This is the opposite of a monopoly. There are hundreds of sellers in the market. Okay? And they're marketing a very standardized product. In other words, it's not a product that has much variety. What you get from the one seller is what you will get from the other, basically. And a good example is wheat or corn. Right? Wheat is wheat. Whether you make it in one area of the country or another area, it's just wheat. So, example is farmers who produce wheat or corn. There are hundreds in South Africa, and most of their products are pretty similar. Now, in a pure competition, the entry barriers are lower, so new competitors can easily enter the market. It's not so difficult to start a farm and start producing wheat. Obviously, if you want to produce it on a large scale, it's going to require a little bit of effort and funding, but still, you can still do it. It's going to be much easier to do that than compete, against British Airways and start your own, airline, or start your own, bottling company or your own soft drink company. It's not so easy. Much easier to just set up a farm. So in a pure competition, there's very little differentiation. Products are not very different from each other. And usually there's many different places you can get the product. So you can't really raise the price. You have to keep your prices low because people can go anywhere to get it. And they often don't have to advertise, because what are they going to say? Come and buy our wheat because it's better than the farmer next door. No, there's nothing really to use to advertise to differentiate your product in advertising. Then we have something called an oligopoly. This is a small number of firms, usually 4 or 5, and they will dominate the market. Okay, so a good example is the cell phone or mobile network industry in South Africa. There are 5 players: Virgin, Cell C, ATAR, Vodacom and MTN, and they dominate the market completely. There isn't really room for any more. Also the airline industry in South Africa. But because there's often such a small amount of competitors, it can often lead to price fixing, where they chat to one another behind closed doors and say, okay, let's all raise our prices together. The problem with that is that then the customers don't have a choice. They have to pay those higher prices, and it's illegal to do that because it has to be fair. There must be a fairness to all customers who can choose higher prices or lower prices. But if all of them raise their prices, then the customers don't have a choice anymore. They just have to all pay higher prices. That's why it's illegal. And companies can get big fines if they are caught doing price fixing. Okay, here's a good image of a oligopoly: Samsung, Google, Apple, Microsoft. And as you can see, what happens often is that the big ones will eat up the small ones. So Microsoft there is eating up Nokia. You were talking here about the cell phone, industry, right? The different mobile cell phone developers. Okay. Some industries follow what's known as a price leader, like that. And there's not often a lot of price flexibility in an oligopoly. You must be very alert to quickly match or adapt your price depending on what the competition is doing. Otherwise, you can lose market share if the one, because everyone will notice. Like in South Africa, Cell C is well known for low prices, and they've lost a lot of market share. Vodacom has lost a lot of market share to Cell C because they haven't really lowered their prices, although they still are the most widely used network in South Africa. Competitive advantage is very important in an oligopoly, and as Jack Welch says, if you don't have a competitive advantage, don't compete. Right? And a competitive advantage is that which makes you better than your competitors. Why should customers come to you and not go to your competitors? Now, if a firm can offer something that customers find beneficial, then they maybe can charge a little bit more. Like Vodacom charges more mostly because you can access the Vodacom network from anywhere. They have a very wide network, whereas Cell C and ATAR and the others don't have such a wide network. That's generally why Vodacom charges more. Okay, then we have monopolistic competition. This is where you have a large number of suppliers, but not the same as with pure competition. And they offer a similar but not identical product. Similar but not identical. And a good example is takeaways. Okay, like burger joints. Burger King, McDonald's, it's all very similar. It's a burger with fries and cool drink, but it's not exactly the same. Okay, and you can get burgers and fries and cool drink at many places. Spur, Nando's, Steers, you name it, you can get it. And then of course also appliances like fridges or microwaves. They all do the same thing. They're all pretty similar, but they're not exactly the same. Also things like TVs, cars, sports shoes, and so forth. These are all form part of monopolistic competition. Each firm has a very small amount of market share, and therefore they use things like brand names and trademarks and packaging and advertising to try and distinguish their products from competitors, and most marketers will go into the industry and work for a company that functions in a monopolistic competition environment. Okay, because that's where branding happens, and that's where advertising happens. It's in this industry. So customers will then begin to prefer specific brands and be even prepared to pay more for them because they like what they offer in comparison to the others. I like Nike, and I'm willing to pay a bit more for a pair of shoes, but not too much more, is maybe what someone would say, because they really love the brand. So they might be willing to pay a little bit more for, their Nike shoes because they really love the brand. They're loyal. So the marketing manager mustn't raise the price too high, because even though they're willing to pay more, it's not going to be like ridiculously more. Smaller competitors can survive by offering high quality products, or by offering products that fulfill a very specific need. Okay, like Mercedes-Benz is a good example. They're a small firm, but they're very successful because they offer high quality cars, and they offer very good service, and they satisfy a very specific need, and it's the need for high quality luxury cars. Most people in the world don't buy a Mercedes-Benz. Most people buy, smaller cars, more affordable cars. So Mercedes-Benz offers only to a very small amount of people. With a very good marketing mix, a small firm can compete very effectively against the big boys. In the car industry, the big giants are, companies like Toyota and General Motors. Poor performance will often also draw new competitors, like the post office has been giving very bad service in South Africa, right? Because it's a public service, so it's attracted, others like DHL and Fastway and Dawnwing and so forth, couriers into the industry, right? Who are now competing against the post office. Unreliable public transport, right, offered by the government is another example that has attracted competitors. So there's more and more taxis offering people more flexible, reliable transport options. And of course, hundreds of new political parties in South Africa coming about to try and compete against the ruling party, who they feel is offering very bad service delivery in South Africa. So every year we see new political parties popping up in South Africa to compete against the ANC.